Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about the next quarter of game releases because we're coming into a really, really heavy Q4. There's a lot of games that are hoping to hit it big, and the reality is all of them probably can't hit it big all at the same time. And so we've got a lot of releases stacked on top of each other. I've got Colan Neese here. I'm going to let him do a quick intro of himself.
Hey everyone, Colin Neese, SVP of Gaming and Screen Engine, ASI, and the Chief Product Officer, Business Officer at mindGame Data. So hello, and I'm glad to be back then.
You've been sort of ringing an alarm bell, I would say, for some number of weeks, even months. What are you seeing as somebody who's watching the mind share?
So I'll take a step back. Yeah, I have been ringing this bell since I think June, because the volume of games coming out in such a concentrated period, regardless of how you think about it, is going to act as a weight that pulls everything else down, even on the margins. And so that has like a broader impact on the gaming industry. So like if I were to recap September, which I just wrote about last week, it's like I think the success game outside of Silksong, and I think part of the success was they were first. They saw the fall. It was like they're like, nah, dog, and they just went first, and they just came out before Borderlands and everything else started happening. But everything else has been seeing, I would say, honestly, anywhere from 40 to 30% like anchor on the predecessor game has been a consistent trend. So the games that are like, oh, we were able to do on the margin, basically what we did last year, I'd call that a success. Or we did like 5 points better, I would call that a success. And like NBA 2K26 is a good example where they did a little bit better than last year based on our metric. And that is, I would consider that a win this year.
Yeah.
No.
Who lost in September?
Oh my gosh. Great question. I'm looking at it right now. I would say EAFC is continuing. It's the first month in their post 2020 like era where they did not win the month based on our metrics. So pretty earth shattering because I had written they were one of the franchises you don't bet against, and I still feel that, but you're seeing a slow decrease in attention on that game every iteration post FIFA license. So we're on year 3 now, and it's down by like another 10 points, and it's not like drastically like, oh, the floor fell out and now we're below water by 30 points, but it's just more like drip, drip on that franchise, which is just going down and down and down. So I just say it's another kind of year where it was a little bit down. Borderlands 4, our estimation, and I think some metrics backed it up. We said it was going to miss its numbers by like 45%. It's something we saw coming for months in advance, and it just kind of came out, and that's by our estimation is kind of where it netted. Unfortunately, it's like it's down by 45%, at least on its initial launch. Now, will it have a long tail, etc.? Maybe, maybe not, but like a game like that, big franchise from 2K, surprising, but not surprising to see it like kind of not hit the highs of Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
And then even go to Silent Hill F. Not a sequel, but the next game from Konami in the Silent Hill franchise post really well received and well regarded remake of Silent Hill 2, right? Also seeing a deflationary like kind of drag on it. And it's just like even like Dying Light the Beast, I know different goal set, etc., but didn't do as well as Dying Light 2. And so granted, so you're just kind of seeing this trend over and over and over and over again. And it's you will go, well, why is this all happening? It's like, well, if everything is coming out within 3 to 5 days of each other, it's just a compounding effect across the entire market. And so we're on to the next month now with October, and you're like, what's going to happen? And I think the only thing I think is a guarantee is Battlefield 6 is going to be a hit. How big of a hit, and will it justify its probably insane marketing investment? Who knows? But that is definitely going to be a hit this fall. And so will Pokemon's EA. I think even if it's a lesser Pokemon title, like their ceiling, their floors are so high with Pokemon titles where it does like at least like 13 to 15 million in sales, no matter what the Pokemon is, then that'll be fine with ZA. And then the rest of the games are like, what's going to happen here? Obviously, I think all eyes are on Call of Duty Black Ops 7, and will it do better than previous installments of COD? Like, I think it's a bit early. They had a pretty successful bump in our tool post beta, but like we shall see, right? They are getting attention share back, but they're also banking on that Battlefield 6 won't pull a lot of players in, and they will be ready to leave that come November when a game release. So they'll have a month. So that's a decent amount of time. But you look at the rest of the calendar in the month of October, and I mean, there's games that I'm like, Ninja Gaiden 4. Oh boy. Not looking very good for that game, which is unfortunate. Arc Raiders, that is one of those titles where I know they had a lot of heat on them at the beginning of summer, and it's all just basically died.
Really?
And we'll see how they do post, beta. I think they do the beta the week after Battlefield 6 launches, which, is a choice. You're assuming you can pull people off of one game to the other game. But, their Embark is a smaller studio and probably got limited resources and budgets, so they got to make their bets count. And, they might just be subject to just the buzzsaw that is this fall where, if they could, I would push their game December, but they probably have a lot of commitments they can't get out of or they can't move around. So they're going to release their game at the end of October before COD, after Battlefield. Like on a strategy document, if you were like, you probably would not put in there saying, oh yeah, let's try to this release strategy where we will come between a sequel to a game that's not been out for a while, but like one of the top tier shooting gun franchises out there, and before the kind of reigning king in North America in Call of Duty, right? Tough spot to be, right? So what does this mean kind of going forward? I hope the industry after this like fall and after kind of the chips fall where they fall, we have like a introspection look at ourselves and, and go, maybe we need to release games across 12 months. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe we don't concentrate all our releases in like a 5-month window. My favorite month to talk about, honestly, is December. What comes out in December? Like, just a quiz. What are the biggest games you think are coming out in December?
I don't even know. Yeah. What's
Well, Metroid Prime 4,
okay?
seemingly owns the month right now. Is the big game that I have flagged as a December release, and it's trending fine. And then a bunch of other stuff that Deadlock, is Valve going to really release the game in its full entirety in December? I have no idea. Curiosity, coming out of especially out of NetEase out of Asia, Anata, right? Like the kind of GTA killer, will that actually come out this year? Doubtful, but like who knows? But like otherwise it's a pretty open month with no necessarily firm launch dates. I'm just like, yeah, 12/31. Our tool defaults everything to 12/31 if they don't have a solid or kind of firm
just
launch
like 2025 basically.
Yeah, basically broad 2025, whereas Metroid Prime 4 is literally coming out in the Marvel Rivals Path of Exile 2 early access date, which is 12/4, which is around the time both those games came out. And it's like, okay, so Metroid, a franchise that's, really popular in North America and not really an audience the rest of the world, including Japan. It's very just a US and like Anglo-Saxon, like Europe thing, but like that owns the December. And like, I just think like more gaming companies need to look at these kind of quote unquote dead months as an opportunity to not compete in this like gauntlet, which is like right now, September, October, and in November. I mean, for people in trying to release a game, I would consider November the Call of Duty month with the Fortnite update. Really hard to fight in that month too, because Call of Duty is going to come out. They're going to win that month until they don't. But they typically are the best selling game, at least in North America. And then you go, and the Fortnite update was now at the end of November. So finding a window there is challenging too.
Yeah.
So really look at December, January. And I'm like, those are great months. Release your game in those months. Because I can tell you that, last year Marvel Rivals and Path of Exile 2 Early Access were monster releases in December. And the loser of that was Indiana Jones. I think we talked about Full Power World came out in January so many years ago. It was deemed a surprise, but it really came out to no competition. So it was able to really own the moment.
Does this sound familiar? You're in a leadership role at a game studio. Everyone is busy working. No one has any time. But the actual game itself isn't in a good spot. Maybe it's the tech. Maybe it's the lack of a validated prototype. Maybe it's that every person seems to have a different idea about what we're trying to build. But you've got a job. There are reports to send, meetings to schedule and facilitate, the occasional season of performance reviews to go through. And everyone is always so busy. When you step back, it makes you wonder if everyone is just going to keep slowly walking towards the abyss until the project or game fails. Is this what it means to be a leader in games? In tech? To endlessly repeat the same sequence of meetings without really moving the needle? To spend hours trying to get Jira tickets and dashboards where they should be? To pretend that everything is fine when you know deep down it really isn't? It doesn't have to be this way. You can make a difference. You can help your team and game succeed, but sometimes you need a bit of help to get there. I've started a game dev leadership accelerator. It aims to level up leaders who see opportunities to make a difference but don't know how to capitalize on them. We'll walk through what it means to lead well and give you tools to understand your organization's challenges and implement changes to overcome them. Game dev is hard. Knowing how to lead will give you an edge. It will still be hard, but you'll be ready to tackle it. If you're interested, let me know below, hit the link. I hope to see you in the accelerator because I believe better leaders will help teams make better games, and I look forward to someday playing what you create. It's interesting because, again, I've watched a few of these videos. People have asked me to react, and they basically said, can you react to this video? The repeating thing is, look, these AAA games are failing. And these indie successes, and so we're entering the age of indies. I disagree with this narrative, but one of the things that you're kind of hitting on here is, hey, you know how you can fail AAA, despite your massive budgets and despite the fact that you probably have a lot of players, is just like you said, inside of a 5-10 day window, have 4 major titles dropping at the same time or something. And it's not a problem that your game was bad or that there wasn't interest or any of these things. It's that literally at any given moment, in any given day, there's so much player attention that can be dedicated. And whether you want to view that as money or attention or whatever, however you want to sort of categorize that from what the player is doing, what the audience is doing, just that you're so stacked.
Let me contextualize this a bit more. I think this is a wild statistic I just pulled because I hadn't looked at this specifically yet. Now I am. So we want to narrative draw a line and say Battlefield 2042 was a failure for lots of reasons. And I've written about this. I don't know offhand, but it came out in a release window where there was a packed month. I think it was Battlefield, Halo, and Call of Duty all came out the same month, which is insane.
Yeah.
Even beyond those titles, there was not much else there. So they really were just a 3-headed beast fighting over attention. And Battlefield was in the middle, COD won, and Halo was Halo, right? So
I'm so sad.
I know, as an elder millennial, I am. So at the same point in time, Battlefield 6's demand curve in our cumulative mindshare launch tool is very much almost on top of Battlefield 2042. But let me rattle off some interesting differences. Right now, same time, so Battlefield 2042 search volume at that, it generated 4.9 million queries in the week before its launch. Battlefield 2042. Battlefield 6, a week before its launch in a wildly competitive market is only generating 1.7 million search queries in the same exact window. And that's not a knock on Battlefield 6. It is really, and EA is spending a bunch of money. I don't think my football viewing over the last 2 weeks has not been without an endless barrage of Battlefield ads where they mock Call of Duty, clearly. And so I've seen it. I'm aware of this game, but the organic interest is just deflated, and not because the game is any lesser and it's going to be the biggest game this month. It's that it's just competing against so much other stuff that even that's deflationary. And I'll just kind of rattle on the other side. Video rank wise on YouTube, it ranked Battlefield 2042 ranked number 33 on YouTube the week before launch. And whereas Battlefield 6 right now ranks number 39. So a little bit less than what it was before. But again, deflationary, right? And you just got to think that's just kind of the market we're in. And so what, again, just kind of reiterate to your audience, what do we do at mindGame? We're very interested in tracking attention. And our kind of funnel framework that we operate on is if you get attention, then people will then likely spend time on this IP. And time could be, if it's free, then they're playing the game, right? But if it's not free, then they're consuming content around the game to then eventually go to purchase/money, right? So attention, time, downstream to money. Money is monetize them through 3-play experiences or monetize them because they just pick up the game and give you the $60 to $70 to play the game, right? But that's kind of the operating framework. So if you don't have attention, you're not going to get time. And if you don't have time, you're not going to earn the money on the other side. So you kind of go, okay, so what's that mean here? It's Battlefield is struggling relative to its predecessor at getting time. And you can just see that in the metrics that we track, right? Whether it be
that's the title that you still predict as the winner for October based on the fact of how much else is out there.
Yeah, like I said before, I think the winners this fall are just gonna be the ones that do as well or a little bit above their predecessor. And I don't know if that's going to be Battlefield 6's ultimate like destiny, but I wouldn't be shocked if it did just a hair above Battlefield. I mean, not hair, but it does better than Battlefield 2020 or 2024. But I think people's expectations for this game now is like it's going to redefine the franchise forever. And I'm like, if it does well, I think it'll do well. But I think it's it's also going to be kind of pulled down by the sheer amount of everything else happening in the market at the same time. And that's just kind of like the weird spot we find ourselves in right now. So yeah, most
Yeah.
expensive, biggest
No,
game
that's
this month, but and I wait to see where Call of Duty is because like the race is getting really interesting between these two titles. Let me just pull up a proxy toward it. So we have daily TikTok data on our end. So this is like an area I spend a lot of time just kind of like playing around and saying what's happening. And so we track the thousands and thousands of games released and unreleased across it. And like right now, Battlefield 6 versus Call of Duty, like right now, like if you look at it from a lifetime view perspective, like Battlefield 6 holds like let me read the exact number. It's crazy. 1.4 billion views, whereas Call of Duty only has 683 lifetime views. Black Ops 7 on
683
TikTok.
million.
Yeah, 683 million lifetime views on TikTok versus Battlefield 6 1.4 billion. But over the last couple of since the beta came out for COD, they're trending at like around 33 30 plus million daily views, whereas Battlefield 6 right before its launch, not what we want to see, is only trending at like 14 million views. So and they've been trading back and forth in our tool like constantly on TikTok views, daily views. So they're clearly pulling from each other, right? It's interesting. One goes up, the other one goes
Yeah.
down.
One of the things that I felt in the market, because I played the most recent BF6 beta and had a good time with it. And I was like, actually, this feels like a really good Battlefield game in a way that like 2042 doesn't. I'm still out here playing Battlefield 1 because I think that's one of the best ones of the modern era Battlefields. But I was playing Battlefield 6 quite a bit when it was out. I was like, this is really, really good. And I felt that it was almost they couldn't, almost like they didn't bridge successfully. Like the beta got a ton of attention, a ton of excitement, a ton of like, and then there's this idea of like, can we bridge that to launch, or are you going to start getting eaten? Now that was just a sense I had, and I've still been pretty bullish on Battlefield 6 overall, but maybe I'll temper it a little bit to like, hey, it might just be at expectation as opposed to some like insane, that huge hit that does redefine Battlefield as the king or whatever, like steals from COD's thunder this year and stuff like that. I'm wondering now, is actually what I'm seeing not necessarily that the bridge didn't happen in the sense of like you failed in your marketing efforts to keep this hot? Is it actually that like everything else started emerging as you got closer to launch, and so we do start seeing COD and its beta, and we start seeing everything else, and so like it's not it's the bridge got really hard to build. Like if it was just you,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's literally like it's exactly right. You're like there's two ways to, like you could look at yourself and like as if you're the only like you're the only thing that can drive any sort of direction. So I myself have complete control over everything, and like I'm going to market the game, and whether the game is successful or not successful is completely on me as a marketer, not realizing there's the market around you, right? And like those
yeah,
act as like gravitational pulls against you. So what you did in a quieter time of the year, which is what Battlefield 6 did really, like if I recall, their big beta push was in what, June, or was it in August? Yeah, it was in August.
August,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
pretty much a dead month or like a quieter month, relatively speaking, right? So they were able to own that with not much competition. But as their kind of traditional window came in and you could see they're spending media everywhere, it's just a grind because they're trying to fight through everything else that's also spending all their media dollars. Like it's almost like you imagine just an insane concentration, a traffic jam, as it were, of just money vying for the limited amount of attention, because that's ultimately what we track in mindGame is it's like all zero sum. It's like, yeah, you might spend a lot of money, but the net is like people only have 100% attention to give, and now they're going to divide that against 5 or 6 games. You're just going to it's become harder to garner that extra point of attention. Every point of attention is going to become exponentially more expensive to attain, right? And so I
yeah,
think if I were to tell them what they should have done at Battlefield 6, like, if you knew like the game is done, you want to sell it, like I just think like probably doing more on Twitch. I'm like looking at some of the data would have been beneficial to them and the pre-launch, like re-hype the streaming community, knowing that, Call of Duty is going to do the beta or like get in front of it a little bit and be a lot more aggressive, let's say, on that sort of stuff and say, hey, have another run at it. Here you go. Here's a little bit extra, right? And just kind of galvanize the community a bit more and just so you maximize that attention as you kind of launch. So yeah, but we're like in a weird spot in the gaming industry, just even outside the release, but even like the Xbox Game Pass like strategy where they're like, actually, we're going to charge you double or 50% more a month before Call of Duty comes out. And then they also leak like, oh no, the market's, I'm a little cynical when it comes to this stuff. Like I think like all things are connected. So they raise the prices out of relative nowhere. Then they also leak that, oh, by the way, for you guys that are more sensitive, we're going to come out with an ad tier at some point. Like, okay, I don't know what that looks like, but that's sure. And then they're like, oh, by the way, gaming industry writ large, we lost like $300 million. We just told Bloomberg this, or they got leaked to Bloomberg somehow that they lost $300 million on Black Ops 6 last year because they put it on Game Pass. So this is why we have to raise our prices.
Yeah.
You're like, man, that is a big chunk of change to just leave on the table. So it's just like, and Game Pass does drive players, and I think that's a tactic and that's what you brought up earlier, like smaller games. I think the smaller games that have succeeded are in part because of Game Pass offsets to some of the discovery issues when you're, day one release on Game Pass and you're a smaller game and you got the bag, as it were, your costs are offset. Like obviously Silksong probably did it best where they both were on Game Pass. I got paid to be on Game Pass, a decent coin. And then on top of it, they sold the game elsewhere for a sizable amount of money too. So they win in both, right? But Rematch came out in June, did the same thing. I think but why? Because of Discovery, man. Because they don't have the marketing budgets to break through in the fall like other big companies do. So it makes sense to do deals with Game Pass. At least if I were to think about it that way, I'm like, yeah, then at least you're gonna be promoted and you'd be discoverable.
It's an interesting variable because you run into a situation like the way I think I described Game Pass recently, and these new changes aren't, I don't think, making this particularly better. It's a huge risk for an Ubisoft or an EA to put their product out on Game Pass because or they have to be really hard bargaining around what do I get for this? Because if I'm like day one out there, players are going to go play my game, and a lot of them, the Game Pass attention is often like spike for a try, but I haven't invested in this game.
Yes.
Like I don't think about that as an investment. I've invested in Game Pass, which means I get to try lots of games. So I haven't invested in this, and so I try it, and if it's not really great, I'm done with it in 2 days. Whereas if I dropped $60, $70 on this thing, I'm probably going to like lean into that a little bit. I'm going to feel a little bit more personal investment, like run further through it. The opposite is true for your small titles, where to have anybody playing your game, to say like, oh, we had 3 million people play this game, or we had, some of them, like we had 100,000 people play the game, right?
Yeah.
And, the scales are different. The mechanics, the whole platform, the marketing, everything. That's a huge win.
Right, because the opposite problem
10 minutes.
True, right? I think you're getting at it.
Yeah.
Whereas like these people are likely never going to play your game because they didn't know what you were, and Game Pass de-risks it because they're buying Game Pass. They see something that catches their curiosity. Maybe the trailer is great, and like, oh yeah, I do have free time.
Oh, that's highly rated. I'll give it a shot.
Exactly right. And they're like less of a risk to like pick it up and try it, and it is what it is. So I guess to your point, like I think a couple things are true. I think EA does this already. I can't comment, but I know I did analysis on their sports titles. They window what goes on EA's like service model. So it's like, yeah, you could play Madden for free effectively, but you have to wait till after the Super Bowl or at the Super Bowl. So they get that like demand, they get the maximum value for people that want to play Madden throughout the NFL season, paying top price. And at the end, they kind of throw it into the, here you go, subscription people. So they do windowing. So like, that's part of it.
Yeah.
The other part of it, I think, would be then beyond the windowing of it all, like make sure your first act is outstanding. Because if you're right, if you're going to sample the game, you better make sure that play loop is just on point in that first 10-minute experience, because that's what you have the attention of the player. Because if they don't like it, they're going to drop it, forget about it, and like not feel pressured via sunk costs to come back to it and try it again, right? Because they're buying Game Pass, not your game. I think that's a great framework to understand the relationship the consumer likely has with Game Pass. But like, let me like run a POV on you, and like you give me like a take. I haven't written about this yet, but something I've been really thinking a lot about. So shout out to the listeners who made it this far. I know we'd like to kind of throw tomatoes at Game Pass for destroying the industry and a lot of think pieces on that. And to be candid, I'm on that like a little bit too, especially when it comes to IP based games. Like I think Doom, The Dark Ages was very much impacted by the fact that it was on Game Pass and people had less of a relationship with Doom because of that. And I think that long term that could be damaging to IP. So I'll just put that out at the front. But when you really unpack what Game Pass is doing, what Microsoft is doing, if they stop tomorrow, which I've written about, there's a world where I think they stop doing all of gaming and they start divesting all of the gaming portfolio. And I think it's nothing to do with gaming at all. It has everything to do with what else Microsoft is doing. But if they stop doing that, they effectively are subsidizing the gaming industry by $1 trillion company. What happens to gaming if they stop subsidizing the gaming industry tomorrow? And I mean subsidizing in that they're giving a lot of indie games, basically de-risking it by giving them effectively probably a version of their cost budget back to them for it to be on day one Game Pass. I don't know. I can't talk about specifics on game by game, but I've heard broadly that this has been a trend for indie games, right? It's why they take the money from Game Pass is it basically just lets them be net neutral on the first game or second game, right? So call that out. And it's not just them. You mentioned Ubisoft, you mentioned EA. They're not doing this for free. Like they're not like, oh, thank you, Xbox. Yes, please take our games and put them on your service. Like they're getting cash on it too. Or even people you don't think about, Riot Games. All the stuff is on Game Pass. If that stopped, that would probably that's like the Apple money. I always joke. That's how I think about it. Like Apple, famously through all the court hearings from Google, gets like an insane amount of free money from Google every year to just be the default search engine on your iPhone, right? It's like $50 billion of free 100% from margin money. It's like just money they just get off the bus, right? And you look at the operating like income of Apple, and it's just like, well, like a half of your money is just literally Google giving you a check. It's free money. It's like, oh, sure, we'll take that money. Thank you. Like, not that Apple would be profitable without it, but they make a lot of money on Google. And I just think like that is not necessarily a one-to-one to gaming, but it is not. It's closer to that when Microsoft is effectively subsidizing a lot of it as they try to build a Game Pass. And I think it would be pretty bad for the industry if they just stop. So while I also think like, I get the criticism being thrown at Microsoft, and I think it's warranted. The business strategy is kind of all over the place. I also am worried that if they stop, what that would do to the gaming industry too, because I don't know where you make up that money. Basically, like you could argue selling games to generate more consumer, yada yada yada. But like,
I think it's one of those things where the thought in my head, and I'll try to get it out in not too much time. The market adjusts to whatever's in it. And then it becomes the norm, and it builds systems around what's present. And so you could say Game Pass is a net negative for the games industry. And I think there's some strong arguments there. I also wonder if there was some inevitability of somebody trying to do something like that with how big games are. Like this is the biggest entertainment industry in the world, bar none. I think it's like you have to either mobile or PC console, either taken individually is bigger than movies and music and everything else, all the little ones combined, right? Just about. So someone was going to try this probably at some point. And the question is it working? Maybe, maybe not. Did you just not find the right business model? That's what they're messing with right now. Can we adjust our business model? But that thing of like, once it's there, everybody starts building reality around it.
Systems,
And so the question would be like, well, maybe it's net negative, but the reality is the systems are in place. If I just rip out that pillar, you're right. I think the impact would be huge and in a lot of instances detrimental. Would the long term of the industry be better? Maybe. But that again, it depends on what, like, does stuff emerge to fill that void? So like the system is always in motion type of thing, and you're always building around whatever those pillars are. So I think you articulate it very well. It's like, we love to hate on Game Pass, and maybe we could say in some abstract way, like, well, I can make an ethical argument, or I can make some sort of argument of like what this is doing, that like this is bad. But the reality is, if you just ripped it out tomorrow, a lot of stuff that a lot of devs are relying on just falls over right away. And all those people that are very happy about a lot of indie successes and AA successes and things like that, like, whoa, suddenly there's a lot less money there, which reduces risk appetite for investors into those spaces. Like there's a bunch of sort of knock-ons. So anyway, I love the frame of like, is is the gaming industry, as huge as it is, being to some extent subsidized by Microsoft attempting to make Game Pass work through multiple iterations. And I'm like, yeah, it's very interesting thought. Okay, let's, because we got a few minutes left. I want you to run me through a couple of things.
Please.
So, based on the data that you're seeing, you said Battlefield 6 is a winner in October. Who are the other winners in October? Who are the winners in November? Who are the winners in December? You already mentioned some of these. And then, who are the unexpected losers? Then I'm curious if you could advise a studio of what it should do, one that's like in the losing bracket, what it should do, which one would you advise and what would you give it? Hey, leaders and game devs, if you love what we do here at Building Better Games, imagine what we could create with your support. By joining our Patreon, you help us bring deeper insights, develop better training, and host more expert discussions to level up your leadership and game development skills. Plus, as a patron, you're going to get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to episodes, and a chance to ask your burning questions directly to us. Join now and help us build better games together.
So I think the winners, the winner of the fall, as it stands now, is going to be Battlefield 6 and Call of Duty. They're going to be the unresounding winners. Like, they're just going to, I'll call it the A-tier game. I don't know if there's going to be an S-tier game. I think Battlefield 6 has the most potential to be an S-tier game. By our estimations, me just blows the doors off. We have a whole model behind it. But right now, it's definitely like a firmly an A. I think Call of Duty is firmly an A. So, like, Black Ops 7, Battlefield 6, like they're right there with each other neck and neck. Who wins? They both win, right? They're going to be the winners of the fall, right? Right behind it, I'll call it the tier below that, is where you get Hollow Knight, EAFC, and Pokemon. I think they're the other kind of three, right? Yes, EAFC is having a down year, so you're like, I just talked about that. I'm like, yeah, they are, but they still win relative to everyone else. So I think that's worth noting and calling out. And same with Pokemon. Until Pokemon doesn't sell 15 million copies and we look backwards and go, wait, what? This game outpaced everything else. I'm just going to assume that the Pokemon fandom is out there day one, right? And obviously, you got to shout out Silksong. Like, again, relative to their budget, relative to their size, blew the doors off, right? So they're the other winner, right? So those are the games that are going to win the fall. And then who kind of did fine is like NBA 2K. I think did relatively well relative to the last 3 to 4 years of their run. Like, this was a good year for NBA 2K26. So shout out to them. And then below that, I think is just kind of everything else, right? Everything else. I should shout out Skate 2. I think it's an interesting one. We'll see. Like, that one's a live service game, so you have to kind of fast forward the time horizon by 6 months to see what's the kind of degradation rate of those games. As a former writer, I think you understand that very well. Like, you can't say a live service game is a successful launch. It so much depends on the long tail, right? So TBD, like incomplete grade, I would say on Skate. And then everything else I would say is just challenge for a variety of challenge. And things I would do if I were I've written about this, but if I were Borderlands 4, you're going to release the game, you can't get out of the commercial agreements. So what do? You have your major content, next content be in the winter, right? Whether it be December, January, you just know that people are going to buy your game and they're going to leave your game. You accept that reality and you do something to bring them back via the first expansion, raid, whatever, in the in the winter, right? So that's what you do if you're like a Borderlands. If you're our creators, man, I wish they could move your release date. It'd be I would say reframe your launch as an open early access beta or whatever, reframe it a bit and then have your official launch. I know this is all it's so funny how gaming companies do this now, but have your real release happen in sometime in the winter. I'd take December, if I were them. That's what I would do, right? And then just looking at a couple other games here before I if you haven't announced your release date, don't. I would just if I were Anata, if from NetEase, and I'm probably butchering that, so apologies to those from NetEase that listen to you. I would say, you know what? Well, if we're coming out this year, we're not going to come out this year. We'll hold firm and see what happens. And then if you're the Game Pass games that Microsoft's publishing, I don't know what you do, like Ninja Gaiden 4 and Outer Worlds 2. I just think they're in a tough spot. I would not have, hindsight, I would have released these games in the winter. I honestly think you want to try to own the winter more than you want to own the fall, knowing that you're competing against these massive multiplayer games are going to generate a lot of the attention and eyeballs. You take these more narrative driven games, for lack of a better word, and you put them out in the quieter winter months where you have, and that's when Game Pass can really come to like dominate, where you have this group of people that are going to be there looking for the thing to play after Christmas, and you just put those games out in January. That's what I would do. So that is my
Got it.
broader take. And then looking forward into Q1, what's going to rule the roost right now? I can tell you, it's going to be Resident Evil, man. Resident Evil. I believe Bond is in March, so those are two games I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. So Bond, the 007 First Light, everything I've seen from it in their data shows it does fairly well. So that's an interesting one to keep our eye on as IO Interactive does more marketing beats into its launch. But I think the market is broadly hungry for a Uncharted-like experience that has not been there for a while, mixed in with a little bit of Hitman. And personally, am I going to play that Bond game? Heck yeah, that looks fun. So caught me in, and then Resident Evil, right, which has become a temple franchise in of itself, and it's going to dominate the Q1. It could be too soon to say if it's going to be Monster Hunter Wilds big, but my eye is on Resident Evil. That everything they've done is just blown the doors off on the pre-interest demand curve.
Does Monster Hunter Wilds win 2025?
Top sales? Ooh, that is a great question. They have such a ramp. Oh man, I'm really hesitant. Man, it's so I wouldn't say that. I would assume that Black Ops 6, even in Q1 sales, would dwarf whatever Monster Hunter Wilds did. But now they have it on Game Pass, I'm really kind of like take a step back. I think if you look at global sales, probably, but we'll see. Like, I don't know, like, because Monster Hunter Wilds is notably a lot more popular in Asia with a strong North America audience. This one in Europe, but like very popular in Asia. So
yeah, no, I mean, it's always interesting because like Call of Duty is just the perennial, like, we win. And then you had Hogwarts just like dropped in there that I think took best-selling game a couple of years ago.
And it was also a Q1 launch, and that's the trend. Like, if you get out early, you can generate all these sales throughout the year and kind of be the top game.
There's a lesson in that, perhaps, for some of these, especially the AAA studios that are really, really in the like the knife fight of attention with each other around a lot of these things. It's Monster Hunter Wilds, if it released in October, probably doesn't do as well as it did by releasing in Q1.
No. Nope.
And while that's not the place where people like to release, necessarily as much, right? Where they want to get in, the sort of, again, end of fiscal years type of stuff, the lead up into Christmas and whatever else. Like, there's reasons why people want to be where the dev teams want to be where they want to be, and publishers want to be where they want to be. And it's not like those reasons are like invalid, but can you recognize that, like, hey, here's a major franchise a lot of people really liked, but it's not as big as some of these other ones. And if you were to drop Monster Hunter Wilds like 4 days after Battlefield 6, it's like that doesn't do as well. It's just it's not gonna have that same impact. And instead, it is a maybe Call of Duty Black Ops 7 still wins, but it's in the conversation like where you have to pause and go, I don't know, maybe Monster Hunter Wilds does win the like most overall sales over the course of 2025. And that's like, think about that. So anyway, I just wanted to like, it's an interesting case study.
It's a real thing. I mean, also that, obviously challenge the fact that giving it away for people that have Game Pass is deflating the sales number, but the players might be higher. And that's just the weird spot we have ourselves in as an industry, where you have some people that buy the game at full price, others that subscribe to the right package at Game Pass, maybe less so now, but like broadly speaking, they do that and they access it there. So they become players, not buyers. And it's just like the metric is completely conflated. And so that's why at mindGame, shout out to us, we don't concentrate on sales because we don't think that is as consequential as attention and players, right? So that's where we think a lot more heavily on. And that's where kind of our framework starts, is players and attention as opposed to sales, because sales is a lot of things with a lot of people, right? So, yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, man. Just go play some good games. That's all I got. On my personal, I'm in my kid corner right now, but I'm excited to play as a personal favorite. I love Final Fantasy Tactics. It's my favorite Final Fantasy of all time, and I am waiting to open that up like a fine bottle of something later this fall when I have time. I'm like, I cannot. It's a perfect airplane game. I'm excited. Like, can't wait to play Tactics on an airplane, basically. So that is my personal favorite coming out this fall. Yeah, but it's been a crazy year in gaming. I just think like it's compoundingly going to get more crazy. More stuff, more sequels, more things coming out every single year. Never mind new
Hmm.
entrants from across the world. And so I just think you're going to see a increasingly crowded calendar. So I hope the gaming industry stops looking at 5 months and looks at 12 months as a release window strategy. So that's where I want to end things.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much for coming back on and sharing the wisdom, the data, your insight. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Have
it.